Hello everybody. Today I'm going to showcase a beginner Python project, which is a really good way of demonstrating understanding of the fundamental programming concepts. Some of these concepts are lists, functions, conditionals, and loops. So before we start, I'm going to comment out all the necessary features we are going to need to code in order to make a functional game of Blackjack. Then I am going to challenge all of you to try and make these features on your own, and then only refer back to the video if you get stuck. But if you just want to follow along with the code, then you do you. Alright, so here are all the features we're going to need to make the game. First, we are going to need to create a deck of cards and create a list of the dealer and player hands. So let's comment out deck of cards and player dealer hand. Then what we're going to have to do is we're going to create some sort of function to deal the cards out. So we're going to need to deal the cards. Autocomplete. Then what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to take each player's hand, the dealer and the player's hands, and we're going to need to calculate the total. So what we're going to need to do is calculate the total of each hand. And then after that we do this, we're going to have some sort of logic that is going to be able to figure out whether or not the player or the dealer won. So I'm going to say check for winner. Alright, so after we do all of these things, we have the core functionality of the game. All we're going to have to do is actually implement these functions into the game. So then we're going to have to make some sort of game loop. I'll just say that. Alright, so now I'm going to challenge all of you guys to try your best to complete this game. I'm going to give you guys one hint before we get started if you're trying to do this on your own, and it's to import random, because you're going to need to do this in order to have a truly functioning game of Blackjack. Alright, so let's hop straight into the code. Let's start off with the deck of cards and the player hand. Alright, so let's create 3 different lists. Let's create the deck of cards, which is going to be one list. Let's create the player hand, which will be another empty list at the beginning. And then let's create the dealer's hand, and we'll make this an empty list. And everyone knows what a deck of cards is, right? So we're going to have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and 10. Whoops. And we're going to have 4 of these, right? So I'm just going to copy and paste this. 2, 3, 4. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just so it's easier to type. And then after we do this, we're going to have our face cards. So I'll just create these as little character strings. So we got jacks, queens, kings, and aces. And like I said before, we're going to have 4 of these. So I'm going to copy and paste this. Did I do 4 of these? 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. So now we have our deck of cards. So we can move on after we've created our deck of cards, and we can move on to our next functionality of the program, which is actually going to be dealing the cards. So how do we deal cards? The deck is going to be shuffled. So what we're going to do is we can create some sort of, let's just start off by creating the function. Let's just say define deal card. Oh, what did I just do there? Whoops. Let's just say define deal card. And how are we going to do this? Let's just pass in some sort of argument that'll tell who's up. So we can just say whoever's turn it is. Okay. So now what we can do is we can create some sort of variable. Let's just say card. Let's just call card as the variable, and this is going to be some sort of random selection from that deck of cards that we just created. So what we can do is tap into that random module that we imported. We can just say random dot choice. Oh, no, that's not it. Dot choice. And then we can pass in the deck, which is the list that we're going to want to pull from. And then what we can do is we can append the turn argument that we pass in. It's either going to be the player or the dealer. So now we can just append this card to that, so that we can add whatever card that we deal, whatever random card that we select from this deck. We can take that and append it to whichever player or the dealer's hand, depending on which one is up at that time. And then after we do that, we're going to want to take out that card out of the deck. So then what we can do is say deck.remove card. Okay, so now that we've done that, that's all we're going to need to do to actually deal a card. Very simple. You don't overcomplicate things. We don't have to. All we had to do was select a random element. That's one line of code. We had to add it to the hand, and then we had to remove it from the deck. That's 3 lines of code. Very, very simple. So now let's move on to calculating the total of each hand. All right, so this is going to be a little more complicated than dealing the cards, but it's not going to be too bad. All right, so bear with me here. So let's create a function called, let's just call it total, and we're going to pass in that same turn argument, and it's going to mean the same thing before, just it's either going to be the player or the dealer's hand. All right, so as you guys know in Blackjack, face cards have different values. Face cards are equal to 10 unless it's an ace, and 10 makes you bust, then the ace is actually going to be worth 1. So we're going to have to code that functionality into this total, but it's not going to be as complicated as you think. So let's start it off with initializing some sort of variable. Let's call it total, and let's set it equal to 0, right? So now we're just going to add on to this total in order to figure out the score of the player and the dealer. So then we're also going to make one more list, right? And let's call it the face, and we're going to pass in all the different face cards. So we got ace, jack, king, and queen. Okay, so now let's loop through all the cards in turn, and let's check this, and let's code in some sort of functionality in order to calculate a correct total. So let's just say the first case that we're going to do is we're going to check to see if the card that we pulled is one of these number cards. So how are we going to do that? Let's just say if card in range of 1 to 11, right? So that's 1 to 10, total plus equal card, right? So now we're going to check to see if this is a number 1 through 10, then add whatever number it is to total. So now let's check to see if this is a face card. So let's say else if card in face total plus equal 1. Now what we can do is actually, to make this a little simpler, I just thought of this, we can take out the ace from these face cards. All right, bear with me here. And if we can code the functionality for the ace, right? So let's come down here and say else, and then we can check to see if the total is greater than 11, because if the total was greater than 11, then adding 10 to it would cause the player to bust. Then we can say total plus equal 1, and then we can say else total plus equal 11, right? Because it's an ace. And then at the end of this, all we're going to have to do is return the total. Now, as you see, all we've done is the first two things. We've dealt the cards and we've calculated the totals, and we've already shown, we've already practiced creating lists, appending things to a list, removing it, tapping into a random module, using a for loop with conditionals, tapping into the range, plus equals. We've done all these concepts, and if you can do this on your own, then you really have a great understanding of the fundamental concepts of coding. All right, so let's move on to the next spot, which is actually going to be checking for a winner. All right, so now what we can do is come down here and we can type let's code For checking for the winner, what we're going to do is we need to give the computer, or the dealer in this case, a little bit of intelligence so that the dealer knows when it needs to hit and get another card, or when it needs to just stop hitting. All right, so let's just call it reveal dealer hand, and I don't think we're going to need any arguments for this. So now this is what we're going to do. All right, so let's just say if the length of dealer hand is greater, actually no, let's just say if it's equal to 2, then let's just return the dealer hand bracket 0, and then we can say if the length of dealer hand is greater than 2, we're gonna return dealer hand bracket 0 and dealer hand bracket 1. Alright, so this is going to make sense a little bit later once we hop into the game loop, but I just wanted to get this down here because it's just gonna make everything run a little bit smoother. So now what we can go down here is we can start the actual game loop of the game. So for every single time a game of Blackjack starts, they're gonna deal the dealer, and all the players are gonna get 2 cards. But for us, there's only gonna be 1 player. So what we can do is we can just have a simple for loop. We can just say for every blank. We don't have to a cool tip for you guys if this is beginning. If you're just like running a for loop for a certain amount of times, you can put an underscore in, and it'll save a little bit of memory in your computer when your computer goes to compile the code, right? Because we're not going to need an actual variable here. So we can say for underscore in range of let's just say 2. We can deal a card, tap into that deal card, and then we can pass in dealer hand, and then we can do the same thing. Let's copy this down to the next line. Oh, what am I doing? Then we can deal card again to the player hand. There we go. So now we've dealt the cards to the player and to the dealer. Let's just print out to make sure this is going well. We can print out dealer hand and print out player hand. This is good practice to get in the hang of, just printing stuff out as the game goes on. Ooh, see, I have an error here. Invalid syntax. There it is. I left I didn't put a comma right there. Now let's see if this works now. There we go. So as you can see here, we printed out the dealer and the player's hand. So everything is working as planned. Okay, so now let's get into the bulk of the game loop. All right, so I'm going to add 2 more global variables up to the top, which are going to come in handy as we're moving the game forward. So I'm going to move them in under here, and they're just going to be player in, and we're going to set that equal to the Boolean true. And we're going to say dealer in, we're going to set that to the Boolean true. So now what we're going to do here is, while the player and the dealer are in, we're going to run through this entire game loop, right? So now we can go down here, and after we dealt the first 2 cards, we can say while player is in. That's not it. While player inventory, the heck, player in or dealer in, we can start kind of making the game look a little bit better in the console. So now we can just print out something to the screen. Let's just say the dealer has, and then we're going to reveal the dealer hand, so the player knows whether to hit or to fold. So now we can tap into that reveal dealer hand function. Okay. And then we're not going to reveal the rest of it. Then we can come down here and we can print out another F string, and then you can say reveal the player's hand. So we can say you have, and then we can reveal the player hand. Just pass in player hand, and then we can tap in and say, let's just give the player the total as well, for a total of, and then we can tap into that total function, total player hand. Okay. And then after we do this, we're going to want to have the player actually put in some sort of input into the game so that they can say whether they want to hit or whether they want to stay. So what we can say is if the player's still in, we're going to ask it to either stay or to hit. So let's create a variable called stay or hit, and let's set it equal to this input function. And then what we can say is 1 to stay, and then let's make a new line, and then 2 to hit, and let's just make another new line to make it a little cleaner. Okay, and then after we do this, we're gonna determine whether the dealer should deal another card to their hand. So if you guys can play with this code to make it a little harder or a little easier, whatever you want. This is how I think would be the best way to do it. So we can say if the total of dealer hand is greater than, let's just say 16, then we're going to want the dealer to fold, right? So we're going to say, or not fold, just stay. So dealer in equals false. And we're not going to need to write global. You guys might be thinking, do you have to write global dealer in here? And the reason why you don't have to do that is because this is not in some sort of other hierarchy. This is in the same hierarchy as it is up here, right? So if we were modifying the dealer in variable in like the deal card function, we'd have to specify as a global variable right here, because the computer is only reading the dealer in within the scope of this function, but down here it's reading it within the scope of the entire file, so we don't need that. So the dealer in is false, but if the dealer hand is less than 16, we're going to want the dealer to get another card. So we can call that deal card function, and we can tap into the dealer hand. Alright, so now that we've done this, we're going to want to actually do something with the player's input. So what we can we ask for 1 or a 2 from the player, and that they're going to type 1 or 2 into the console. So now we can say if stay or hit is equal to 1. Guys got to keep in mind that any single thing that is returned by this input function always is returned as a string. If you want it to be an integer, you could just go in here and convert it to an int, but I don't think that is necessary, so I'm just going to keep it as a string. Okay, so we can say if stay or hit is equal to 1, then we're going to say player in, and we're going to set it equal to false. And then what we're going to say is if it's anything, if it's a 2 or else, we're going to want to deal another card to the player. So we're going to say deal card, player hand. There we go. So now that we've done this, all we got to do is determine the winner. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say if the total of player hand is greater than or equal to 21, we're going to want to break out of this loop. All right. And then we can say elif the total, elif the total of the dealer hand is greater than or equal to 21. We're also going to want to break out of this loop. So now we're going to stay within this loop until one of the player or the dealer busts, or the player and the dealer stay. Okay, so now that we've done this, we're going to want to determine the winner. So we're going to have a little bit of typing here, but that's going to be all right. Very basic code though. So now let's code to see if the player or the dealer gets blackjack. So if the total player hand is equal to 21, then sweet, you got blackjack. All right, so let's print out. Let's make this an F string actually. And then we can make a new line just to make it a little cleaner. And then we can say, you have, and then we can pass in the player's hand for a total of 21, and the dealer has and then we can pass in the dealer hand for a total of, and then we can pass in total of dealer hand, and then we can say, oh, whoops, and then we can print out Blackjack, you win, or something like that. Actually, what we're going to do here is I'm just going to so I can copy and paste this. I'm going to delete this, and then I'm just going to say total of player hand. Right, so now we can take this entire line, we can copy and paste it for the rest of the conditions. So now what we can do is we can come down here and say elif total of dealer hand is equal to 21. Then we can come down here, print this, and then we can print, what should we print here? We can say blackjack again, dealer wins. And then we can come down here and we can code to see if the player busts. So we can say if total of player hand is greater than 21, then we can say the same thing as before, fix the indentations for that, and send print you bust, dealer wins. Then we can come down and say elif the total of the dealer hand is greater than 21, print out this line, and then we can say print dealer busts, you win. Then finally, I think this will be the last one. So we're gonna have to code to see who, if they both the dealer and the player stay. We're gonna say who is the closest to 21, so who wins. So how are we going to do this? How about this? It's actually more simple than you think. It just requires a little bit of logic. So what we can do is we can say if 21 minus the total of the dealer hand is less than 21 minus the total of the player hand, then we can copy and paste the same thing as we did before, and then we can print that the dealer wins. As you can see, we're finding the difference or the distance between the dealer hand and the player hands from the goal of 21, and as you can see here, there's a greater distance for the player hand and the dealer hand, so we know that the dealer is actually closer to blackjack or 21. And then we can code our final little section of code, and we can say elif 21 minus the total of dealer hand is greater than than the player hand. Then we can print the same thing and then print you win. And that's pretty much it. So let's see if I didn't make any errors in our code. Let's see if it runs. It looks like it ran. So as you can see here, it says the dealer has 7 and X. I have a king and a 9 for a total of 10. That is not right. There it is. I forgot to put the 0 after the face cards. So as you can see here, we have our finished game. So we have to see the dealer has a queen and some other card, and we have an 8 and a 2 for a total of 10. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to hit. So now we have the dealer stayed, has a queen and an X, and I have 20, so I'm going to stay. And I have 20, the dealer has 19, so I win. We can run it again, you guys can see that it works. I have 10 and 8 for a total of 18. The dealer has a king and some other thing. I'm going to stay here. And the dealer had a king and a jack, so they had 20, so the dealer wins. But as you can see, that's all it is to it. We created a functioning game of blackjack in just 80 lines of code, and you demonstrated your entire all the basics of programming. So if you guys were able to do this on your own, fantastic. If you guys followed along, I challenge you to, after watching this video, go back and try to make it yourself. But that's pretty much it. If you guys enjoyed, please leave a like and let me know what you guys think.